Hey guys, Ray and Andrew here with REH CPAs, and we get questions all the time from our S Corp owners about paying themselves on a payroll. How much do they have to pay themselves? Do they have to do it? How often? So Ray, what can you tell us about some of those?
So let's start off with, do I have to pay myself a W-2 wage? So if you are an S Corp owner employee, you're working in the business, then what the IRS says, you must pay yourself reasonable compensation.
Okay.
Now, what is reasonable compensation? Well, it depends on a bunch of different circumstances, right? And also understand that if the business isn't making money, then don't pay yourself. Don't borrow money or put money in to pay yourself, right? Mm-hmm. That doesn't make any sense. You only do what the business can support, right? So what the IRS does say, though, is that you have to pay yourself reasonable compensation. Now, if the business is making money, what's reasonable compensation? Well, there's a bunch of different factors that you have to look into that the IRS is going to consider. They're going to look at, how many employees you have, how much you pay those employees, how involved are you in the business, what is your skill level in the business, how much you've pulled out through distributions from the business, things like that. So just be aware that if the business is making money, then you need to figure out a reasonable compensation. And a lot of times what they'll do is they'll look and see what similar people are paying themselves in that industry, right? So there's a difference, if you are managing like a car repair shop versus a financial advisor who's on his own. There's going to be different compensation strategies there that you need to think about.
Sure. So how often, so say I'm paying myself a W-2 wage, or I'm going to, how often should I do it?
So I recommend at least monthly, right? Okay. So if you have employees, then put yourself on the same schedule as them.
Sure.
If you're paying your employees bi-weekly, then put yourself on the same schedule as bi-weekly as them. Make things easy, but at a minimum, let's say it's just you with a single member S Corp, one person S Corp, then I want you to pay yourself at least monthly, right? Because what will happen is if you ever go under audit with the IRS, so we have a lot of S Corp owners that we'll see that they'll cut one check at year end. And they'll think that takes care of them for the whole year for their payroll. Well, from a tax standpoint, yes, but what the IRS does is they come in and look, and they'll see, like if you've been taking distributions every month, right, and then cutting that one paycheck at year end, they're going to look at those distributions and say, that's how you were living. Right. That's how you were paying yourself. That's your W-2 wage. So then they'll take all those individual payments and call those your W-2 wage, recharacterize it as W-2 wages, then they're going to want the taxes on that, plus penalties and interest. So
it's got to look like payroll.
It's got to look like payroll, right? So I tell people, if you have employees, get on the same schedule. If you're the only employee, do it at a minimum monthly.
Sure. And even paying it throughout the year helps with cash flow. I mean, you don't want to get stuck at the end of the year paying yourself a large payroll and then have to pay another 10 grand in whatever the payroll tax may be.
Absolutely. It's a lot easier to stomach doing in little pieces all throughout the year. So absolutely.
Sure. And another wrinkle in S Corp compensation is health insurance. So how does that work for an S Corp owner?
Yeah. So in order for us, so what we're trying to do is take what's called the self-employed health insurance deduction on your tax return. Yep. Well, in order for us to do that, we have a certain process that we have to go through, right? So what you do is you have your S Corp pay the health insurance premiums directly to the insurance company for the owner, right? So the owner can have his own policy, and then the S Corp just pays that in full, or pays that, whatever monthly, however the payment schedule is set up, to the insurance carrier, or they can reimburse the owner for those premiums that were paid. And then what that looks like is that, it goes through the S Corp, and then that goes on their W-2 wage as compensation, right? So it's not, health insurance isn't deducted at the S Corp level, it's deducted as compensation. So whenever you go to do your W-2 at year end, then that doesn't have Medicare and Social Security taxes on it. It's just a box one entry. Right. So it goes in as W-2 wages on box one, and then we're able to deduct it on the 1040. But that is included as part of your compensation on the W-2.
Right. So definitely make sure you do that so you get that self-employed health insurance deduction and stay in compliance with the IRS.
So if you have any questions, we deal with those questions a lot about S Corp owners trying to figure out how much they have to pay themselves, if they have to pay themselves at all. The biggest takeaway is if you're making money, then yes, you need to start paying yourself something. How much is the tougher question, and we can help you with that, because it also depends on how much money the business is making. There's different strategies for a guy who's netting $50,000 than a guy who's netting $500,000, right? So there's different strategies there, different ways of thinking. I'm always careful to tell people, I always want people to pay themselves as high as possible on a W-2 that they can afford to do, right? Because not only are you meeting the IRS's standards, but you're also you're building Social Security tax credits and things like that, which is going to help you out when it comes retirement time.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's awesome. Good point. So I appreciate you going through that with us, Ray. And if you guys have questions about S Corp conversation, give us a call.